Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull, and Tennessee football team is done with spring practice. We all know that the orange and white game was this past Saturday, but the transfer portal is actually supposed to be opening up today, but everyone's talking about it officially opens up tomorrow. So some news and notes will be coming out in regards to the football team, but we do have a couple of notes, a couple of things that I do want to touch on with our football team, but we still have a whole lot of volunteer stuff to cover, okay? So track and field, men's baseball, men's basketball, Lady Vols basketball as well. We'll get into all of that in today's video, but do us a really big favor. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. All right, so let's start off with the football team. The orange and white game, spring practice ended, all that good stuff. A lot of people are concerned about the offensive line, concerned about the secondary, but you have to keep in mind that with the orange and white game, with our spring game, what we're doing is we are just doing something for the fans. Like, we want to show that, hey, the offense can be explosive. We kind of want to, showcase certain players. But as far as the offensive line goes, we talked about it on this channel, just coming into the whole thing, that there's, a couple of key players in Cooper Mays and Spraggins being out, okay, at center and at right guard, that is going to, make the middle of that offensive line not look as strong as what it should be, especially keep in mind that we're going up against a top 3 defensive line in the entire country. And I think that it's going to end up being the best in the entire country. So what we saw was from the starters, they looked really good, right? Like, you've got to know what to look for in these games. The starters looked great. The people that weren't starters, I think that they held their own, and that's all that you can ask for. So the offensive line is going to be fine, y'all. Just do not be, scared of how the offensive line looked. Yeah, there's going to be a couple of times where Nico's going to get sacked, but guys like James Pierce going up against Lance Hurd, what did James Pierce do in that game? Now, he didn't play every single snap, but at the same time, Lance Hurd held his own. So, the left side of that offensive line looks really good. I think that our backup center, Bison Lane, looked good. But we know that if Cooper Mays comes in, we're going to take another step forward, okay? Dane Davis is not a true right guard. He looked pretty solid there. But we know that once Spraggs comes in, we're going to take another step forward, and we're going to gel a lot better. So looking forward to that for the rest of the offseason over the summer and getting into fall camp, things like that. How do they gel? But I know that they're going to be on the same page because they got to play together a pretty solid amount early on in spring, outside of Spraggs, who didn't play, but he's a wily old veteran. He can step in, and he's played alongside of John Campbell on the right side. Maybe not with John Campbell on the right side, but he did do it some last year in spring. So there's nothing to be concerned about with the offensive line. We're going to be just fine. Our starters are great. And, I think we've got some pretty good depth right behind those players, especially considering that this is so early on in the process. Keep in mind, over the summer, players get a lot better, but I love the floor that our young offensive lineman came in with. And then going on to the secondary, yeah, we had some touchdowns that were given up on some deep passes, but keep in mind that Coach Heupel likes to keep our offense, he likes to keep it very close to his vest, right? So we're not going to come out and show how to stop this offense. And I am going to actually break down what happened in all of those touchdowns with our members on this channel, okay? And y'all will be able to understand what happened. But literally, it's nothing to be concerned about too much. Now, there are some players that I've seen getting beat deep on a consistent basis. Yeah, we've got to get that fixed, okay? We've got to find a way for them to know, hey, you cannot get beat deep. If you're going to lose, on some shorter routes, come up, make the tackle, and we can live with that. So that's going to be it for our football notes, but let's switch gears to track and field because Jacia Sears just ran a 10.77 in the women's 100 meters at the Tom Jones Invitational down in Gainesville, Florida. And 10.77 is the second best time in NCAA women's history. The fastest time was a 10.75. Now, let's keep in mind that there was a 1.6 miles per second tailwind, which equates to about 5,760 miles per hour as far as the wind goes. Now, I might be off on those calculations, but that's what I came up with. So she did have a pretty strong wind behind her, but at the same time, as far as I know, okay, I did run track growing up and things like that, but it was really just a secondary sport for me to get faster for football. So I'm not too privy on the ins and outs on, as far as how times stick and when they don't, things like that. But the time, as far as I can tell, is sticking. And that's huge, right? It just goes to show that she can compete with the best in the entire world. I think that she will end up getting invited to the Olympics. That's really big for her. That's really big for our university. So proud of her for that. And we also had true freshman Aaron Alvarez Aranda threw a 58.89, which is a personal best for him and a freshman record in the discus. And last but certainly not least, Javanya Valcourt ran a 51.15 in the 400 meters, which is actually a personal best for her and it's second best amongst our Lady Vols, only trailing Dee Trotter, who ran 50 seconds in the 400 meters, and she went on to be an Olympic champion. So the track and field team looks really strong early in the process, and we'll keep y'all up to date on all of the news and notes as the season progresses. Now let's go ahead and switch gears to our Lady Vols basketball team. And the biggest news here is that Coach Kim Caldwell is going to be hiring Jenna Burdett, who was her associate head coach back at Marshall. So I think that that's a really good deal. It also sounds like Samantha Williams, who was on the staff this past season, will not be retained by Coach Caldwell. Some people have made a big deal about all this stuff, but I think that if you're going to bring in a new head coach, you've got to let them cook. You've got to let them get their people into the building. We have to trust her. We've got to give her a good chance to, create what she sees fit for our program. And, I feel like she's going to do a great job. We've seen what she's done since she's been a head coach. So just trust the process, y'all. Don't get too down on it. She's going to find the right people for our Lady Vols basketball team. And I think that next season, we're going to have a really good team. And I would say over the next 2 to 3 years, we could start talking about national titles. But I don't want to put that pressure on her this early on, in her first year. But, I would definitely say, again, from year 2 to year 3, maybe even, from year 3 to year 4 to 5, we should be expecting some Final Fours, and some national titles once again, which is where our Lady Vols belong. So happy to hear those things. Obviously, always sad to see someone leave or, someone get let go, but you are happy about the progress of our program as a whole. All right, now on to baseball. We just swept LSU, who is the reigning national champions in college. We beat them 6-3 in the first game, 3-1 in the second game, and 8-4 in the final game. And we are currently ranked number 4. We may end up taking a bump up in those rankings. And our next game is versus the Bellarmine, which is going to be tomorrow at 6 p.m. But the big series that is coming up is going to be versus Kentucky. That's going to be in Lexington. And Kentucky is currently ranked number 8, but they've got a really good SEC record. I think that they've only lost 1 game. So we'll see how we can come away in that series. This could end up being a top 5 matchup between us and Kentucky. I think that they could end up getting that bump up, like we just talked about in those rankings, just because their ACC record is so strong. Now, they haven't really played up against the best competition, but this is definitely one for us to take a look at and just kind of gauge where we're at as far as a World Series title that we're definitely chasing. I think that we are in a really good spot. I love this team. We're actually leading the nation in home runs with 95. So that should tell you a lot about the way that we're batting. We've got to continue to improve on pitching, though, because as far as baseball goes, especially once it gets to, playoffs, tournaments, things like that, it's all about the pitching. So I just want to see our pitching continue to grow and get more consistent, but it does seem like it's trending forward. Let's also talk about Billy Batts, who comes in the series versus LSU. His first at bat hits a homer. So he is back in full effect. And, I'm just very, very proud of this team, very proud of Coach V and all that he's done for us. I think that as long as he's coaching for us, we're going to always be one of those teams that you've got to keep a close eye out on. And, we'll see what happens over the next, I would say, month or so. And the last segment of the day is going to be on our basketball team and that transfer portal. We all know that Jonas Adu did enter into the portal. We know that Tobe Awaka also was leaving us, but it sounds like Tobe has been meeting with Coach Barnes and the rest of the staff and potentially might be coming back. Now, we kind of touched on this in a video. I want to say maybe last week. It might have been in the week before last, but we didn't get an opportunity to really go, in depth with this. Basically, Tobe was leaving us because he wanted more minutes. And it sounds like the staff came to him and said, hey, listen, JP is going to be getting more minutes because he can really stretch that floor. He's a, big that can not only score down in the post, but he can also shoot from the perimeter. So sounds like he was going to be getting an increase in minutes, and Tobe did not want to take that decrease in his minutes. Now, that Jonas is going to be leaving us because he wants to go out and it sounds like maybe get some more money in the transfer portal, and he was kind of flirting with that last season. But, he also wants to kind of showcase his skills as a big man that can shoot from the outside as well and try to increase his draft stock. Now, I love all of our players, but I would say that if there was one that I really wanted to retain, as far as the players that have left, it would have been Tobe. So just the simple fact that Tobe is very strongly considering coming back to our Volunteers for next season and helping us, keep that depth that we had with our post presence. And we all know that he was that dog down there. I mean, even though he fouled a whole bunch, you like that. Like, you need to have a player on your team. If it's going to be a championship team that can kind of, enforce it and, stop people from coming inside so easily, that's critical. So hopefully Tobey will come back. But outside of that, we've been inside of that transfer portal heavy. We had 3 big-time visitors up on campus this weekend. We're going to touch on first Igor Bluechip, and he's a 6'10", 225-pound forward from Charlotte. Now, he also played at Virginia, I want to say in his first season, but he's averaging 12.8 points per game, 8.5 rebounds, 1.7 assists. He's shooting at 48.7% from the field, 37.6 from 3, and 79% from the free throw line. He's also averaging 1.1 blocks. So we talked a lot last week about going out into the portal and finding some players with that length that can score, whether it's just creating your own shot or they are pure shooters. Sounds like that's exactly what we're doing. Obviously, with Igor being 6'10", he looks really good down in the post, but really he's more of a shooter, right? I mean, he can shoot from the outside, shoot from the inside, and he's going to be a body that we could most definitely expect to score if we can end up landing him. So my biggest thing with Coach Barnes is just seeing that he is willing to kind of change, because you've got to understand that the way the basketball is set up these days is more about the offense. And I would say maybe all of sports, because football is the exact same way. It favors the offense with the way that the game is called from the referees, things like that. So I love to see that. And hopefully, again, we can close out on Igor. Now let's move on to the next player, who is Darlington Dubar. And he is a guard from Hofstra, 6'8", 219 pounds. He's a junior. And also, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but Igor Bluechip is also a junior. But Dallas Stone gets 17.8 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, and 1.4 assists. He's averaging 53.9% from the field, 39.9% from 3, and 73.4% from the field goal line. He also is getting about a block per game and 1.2 steals. So just in watching Mr. Dubar's game, I love what I saw from him. He's a player that can, kind of create his own shot, but he also is a really good shooter from the outside. And that's exactly, again, what we needed. At 6'8", playing guard, I think that he would end up being maybe like a wing for us. That's what we need. Okay, we're looking for a wing and we're looking for a power forward. And it sounds like we are targeting 2 of those positions. Now, as far as where we stand with any of these players, I'm not quite sure. It does sound like we're in a really good spot with Dubar, but both of the players that I just mentioned will be taking more visits. The one thing that I will say about Dubar's game is that he's got an awkward kind of shooting motion. He kind of starts out on his left hip. But again, as long as he's hitting them, I think it's cool. Now, does the staff try to change his shooting motion? I don't think that they would. Not at this point in the game for him. You just kind of like let him do what he does. But I just cannot emphasize enough how encouraged I am that Coach Rick Barnes is going out and targeting players that can actually score. I would say that out of these 3, Dubar would be one of the 2, okay, including the last player that we'll be talking about that can create their own shot as well. And it's going to be critical whenever you're talking about an NCAA tournament. And the last player is going to be Cade Tyson from Belmont, 6'7", 205-pound guard. He's a junior, averaging 16.2 points per game, 5.9 rebounds. He's shooting 49.3% from the field, 46.5% from 3, and 85.5% from the free throw line. He's also averaging 1.6 assists per game. And Cade Tyson is a guy that, again, has that length. He's definitely a very good shooter, but he can also create his own shot, which is, again, is what we need. And I will have a link for each player down in the description below for those of y'all that want to take a look at these players a little bit closely if you have not already seen them. I think that Coach Barnes is doing a really good job of going out and identifying the players that we need to add to this roster to compete for the Final Four, to compete for a national title next season. I think that we can, especially considering, hey, ZZ's going to be back, Mayshek's going to be back, Gainey's going to be back. So we've got some scores on the outside. I also really like what I saw from Cam Carr last year, just in the limited minutes that he got as being a spot shooter. So what I'm seeing that we're trying to do with this team is go out, get that length, just like we talked about, and find some people that can score, because defense is really all about effort. I know that Coach Barnes is going to be able to teach to that. He's going to find some, little fundamental flaws in everyone's game and get them better at that. But if we can score on the offensive end, then we can end up being that team that can win the whole thing. Now, we're not going to have another DK, obviously, that is, like a once in a, maybe 10 to 15 years type of a deal. But you know what? Actually, let me talk about DK, because his pitch that he threw out with our baseball team versus LSU was spot on. And I'm really, really proud of him for that. I mean, that just looks good for our entire program, that we've got great athletes all over. And it sounds like he's in the top 10 for most NBA mock drafts. I would say that he needs to be top 5. He can really ball. I hope that he has a great, very successful career in the NBA. I think that he can really do it all, especially coming here with Rick Barnes and learning how to play defense. He's going to bring a lot to the correct franchise. I wouldn't be mad if my Hawks could go out and grab him. But again, just talking about the basketball team as a whole from top to bottom, we did lose some really key players, but I feel like if we can get Tobey back, then all of a sudden we're looking great. Now, I think that we're down like 6 scholarships, so we will continue to try to go out and find more players. If we can land all 3 guys that were up on visits this weekend, I would suggest maybe going out to find another big, okay? Find you another guy that can kind of stretch the floor and maybe is a little bit more dominant down in the paint. You just want to be able to show some different matchups versus different looks, different teams, things like that. Maybe just go out and try to find some more spot shooters, or maybe another player that can really just create their own shot. That's going to be big. We cannot have enough shooters with the way that basketball is set up these days. But that's going to be it for this video. I wanted to keep it short, wanted to keep it sweet and simple, straight to the point, but I also wanted to be able to kind of touch on everything else. We will probably have a video coming out tomorrow once we get some more news and notes on who could potentially be leaving our football team in the transfer portal. Again, sounds like that really opens up tomorrow. But, just stay tuned to the channel because a whole lot of content is going to be coming out. And thank y'all so much for sticking all the way to the end. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. And we'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.